What happens when one of Hollywood's most no-nonsense actors walks into a late-night studio and finds himself ambushed by a host who can't handle honesty? What was supposed to be a routine appearance to promote Mark Wahlberg's new film spiraled into a clash so raw, so unscripted, that network executives had to intervene, cutting the segment mid-show and pulling Wahlberg from the building during a commercial break. By the time the cameras came back, he was gone. Social media exploded. The studio fell into chaos. And millions of viewers witnessed a side of late-night TV that networks never want you to see. But before we unpack what really happened that night, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and drop a comment if you've ever noticed the mask of friendly banter slip during a celebrity interview. Because this wasn't banter. This was battle. The night Mark Wahlberg walked in and didn't come back, it started normal enough. The crowd roared as Wahlberg strutted onto the set, confident, grounded, classic Wahlberg. He shook Colbert's hand and took his seat with ease. They opened with the usual softballs, movie plugs, fitness routines, a couple of light jabs. "So Mark, I hear you wake up at 4:30 every morning to work out." Colbert smirked, clearly teeing up a punchline. "Yeah, I do," Wahlberg said. "All sincerity, discipline's kept me alive in this business." That's when the first crack appeared. Rather than move on, Colbert leaned into mockery. He exaggerated his expressions, played it up for the crowd. "Come on, nobody needs to wake up that early unless they're delivering newspapers or milking cows." The audience laughed, but Mark didn't. He stayed calm but firm. "Look, Stephen, I get that this lifestyle's not for everyone, but it's worked for me. I've built my entire career on consistency and hard work." For a moment, Colbert's smile slipped. Then things got worse. The shift from promotion to confrontation is, Wahlberg discussed his new role. A character rooted in his working-class Boston upbringing, he shared how much authenticity means to him as an actor. "I never forget where I came from," he said. "That's what guides the roles I choose," Colbert cut in. "But in this political climate, don't you think constantly romanticizing the working class gets problematic?" The room fell quiet. Wahlberg blinked. "I'm not sure I follow." His accent thickened slightly, a tell for those who know him. "There's nothing political about respecting hard work or staying grounded in your roots." Colbert didn't back down. "Well, some would say it's convenient, claiming working-class credibility while living in a mansion." His tone sharpened. "Especially when many of your fans are living paycheck to paycheck." The camera cut to the audience, not laughing anymore, confused, uncomfortable. Wahlberg, visibly thrown, shifted in his seat. "Stephen, I'm here to talk about my film. Not to defend my life. I've never pretended to be something I'm not." Off-camera, Colbert's producer began frantically gesturing. A silent wrap it up, but Colbert ignored it. The breaking point, Colbert leaned forward, his whole energy shifting from late-night host to late-night prosecutor. "Don't you think celebrities have a responsibility to acknowledge their privilege?" he asked. "Especially when the image they're selling doesn't match their reality?" The air turned ice cold. The audience was frozen. Wahlberg leaned back, his expression hardening. "You're not interested in a conversation. You're trying to pick a fight." The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, and when we return in the next chapter, you'll see the exact moment Wahlberg snapped. The phrase that made him stand up, and the move that got him escorted out of the building, because what happened next, it wasn't part of any script. The moment the room turned, the shift in the studio was sudden and sharp. The laughter had died. The usual rhythm of the show, tight, polished, scripted, was unraveling by the second. And Mark Wahlberg, to his credit, kept his cool, even as the camera caught the muscle twitching in his jaw. "I think celebrities have a responsibility to be honest," Wahlberg said evenly. "And honestly, Stephen, I'm starting to feel like I was invited here under false pretenses." He paused just long enough for the tension to land. "If you wanted a political debate, you should have booked a politician." Gasps flickered through the audience. Colbert opened his mouth to respond, but the screen abruptly cut to commercial. Viewers at home were left blinking in confusion. The break had come early, too early. Later reports confirmed network executives had made a snap decision behind the scenes, and when the show returned, Colbert was alone. No explanation, no apology. Just a smiling transition into the next segment, as if Mark Wahlberg's sudden disappearance wasn't the elephant stomping around the studio, But social media had already erupted. People were asking what happened, what really happened during those missing minutes. Backstage, the masks came off according to multiple staffers who were in the room. The real fireworks started the moment the cameras cut. Colbert, normally composed, ripped off his mic, stood up, and stormed toward Wahlberg. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" He snapped, his TV-friendly persona gone in an instant. "This is my show. You don't come on my set and try to lecture me on how to do an interview." Wahlberg, still seated, didn't flinch. But when he stood, he towered over Colbert. "I came here to talk about a film," he said calmly, "not to be your political punching bag. Where I come from, guests get treated with respect." More than a dozen staff members witnessed the confrontation. One production assistant whispered to a colleague, "I've never seen him like this." Colbert jabbed a finger at Wahlberg's chest. "You think that blue-collar badge gives you some kind of moral authority? You've been rich for decades, Mark. You're no more connected to that world than I am." Wahlberg's jaw tightened again. His voice stayed steady. "And you think hiding behind comedy gives you a pass to ambush your guests. I've been straightforward my entire career. Can you say the same?" The ultimatum producers scrambled. The senior executive was called onto the floor. "We need to move on," one producer whispered urgently to Colbert. "There are 2 more segments." Another guest already in makeup. Colbert didn't budge. "I'm not going back out there with him." His voice was low, but sharp, deliberate, loud enough for Wahlberg to hear. "Either he goes, or I go." The executive producer looked back and forth between the 2 men. This wasn't just a bad night it was a full-blown mutiny on the set of one of late night's most controlled shows. "Are you serious right now?" Wahlberg asked, stunned. "You're throwing me off your show because I wouldn't let you lecture me." Colbert turned to face him. "This isn't some movie set, Mark. This is my house. And in my house, we follow my rules. The exit, that's when the executive made the call, one that would be dissected by the industry for weeks to come. Mark, I think it's best if we reschedule. For a time when things are calmer." Wahlberg stared at him, realization dawning. "So, that's how this works?" he asked. "He throws a tantrum, and I'm the one who gets escorted out." "It's not personal," the executive began, but Wahlberg cut him off. "Everything about this is personal." He pulled off his mic, shaking his head. "This whole thing was a setup. Those questions weren't about my movie. They were designed to corner me, humiliate me, make me look small so he could look clever." Security approached. Wahlberg raised a hand. "No need for that. I know my way out." The room went still as Wahlberg gathered his things. No shouting, no drama. Just a quiet, searing dignity that made the moment land even harder. He turned to the executive one last time. "You know, I've done a lot of press in my life, tough interviews, real journalists. But I've never had someone pretend to be a friend just to ambush me with a smirk and a punchline." The final blow before leaving, Wahlberg turned back one last time. "I play characters for a living. But when the cameras stop rolling, I'm still me. Can you say the same?" Colbert didn't answer. His face flushed red, his jaw set tight. But he said nothing. Wahlberg turned and walked toward the exit. The production crew stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Silence fell like a curtain. One brave production assistant approached him quietly, holding out a small bag with his personal items. "For what it's worth," she whispered, glancing nervously toward the stunned crew. "This isn't the first time something like this has happened." Wahlberg accepted the bag, not surprised. "Won't be the last, either." Spin mode backstage, Colbert huddled with his writing team. Voice sharp and clipped as he rewrote the show in real time. "No mention of Wahlberg when we're back," he snapped. "Move the musical guest up. The second segment, keep it light, tight, forgettable." Out front, the audience waited, confused. The energy in the room was tense, expectant. In the green room, the next guest, a well-known actress, watched the monitors with unease. "Is everything okay?" she asked a staffer. That interview seemed tense. The staffer smiled tightly. "Just a slight change of plans, Mr. Wahlberg had to leave unexpectedly." Back on Iran set, the floor manager counted down. "We're back in 5, 4, 3. Colbert straightened his tie, smiled. 2, 1, a finger pointed. The red light blinked on. "Back," Colbert said, his voice smooth as glass. Unfortunately, Mark Wahlberg had to leave. "But we've got a great show ahead," the audience murmured. Whispers crept through the crowd. Something didn't add up, but the show marched on a carefully rehearsed performance of business. As usual, outside the studio, Wahlberg declined to speak to waiting paparazzi. "Watch the show," he said, climbing into his SUV. "It speaks for itself." Behind the curtain backstage, another commercial break gave way to fury. Colbert's mask slipped again. His frustration boiled over. Who vetted him? A junior producer cautiously stepped forward. "Sir, we followed standard protocol." His team was told this would be a promo interview. Standard doesn't mean softball, Colbert snapped. "We're supposed to challenge these people, especially when they're just here to sell something," a staff writer muttered to a colleague, just low enough to avoid being heard. Funny how that standard only seems to apply to certain guests. The next segment rolled on, but the energy on set was fractured. A camera operator mouthed to another, "This is going to leak." And leak it did. The fallout by morning, social media was ablaze. "Strangest thing I've ever seen at a taping." One audience member posted, "Wahlberg was there, then gone." No explanation. Colbert pretended it was nothing, but you felt it. Colbert reportedly spent the rest of the night snapping at staff, insisting the incident never be mentioned again. "Anyone who talks to the press about this is fired," he told them during the final commercial break. But the narrative had already escaped. Witnesses from the audience, production assistants, industry insiders, all began piecing the truth together. Not what the broadcast didn't show was this. Wahlberg didn't immediately leave the building. Instead, Wahlberg said through the door, "Man to man, not for the cameras." Inside, Colbert sat with his executive producer and head writer, already plotting spin control, talking edits, headlines, damage limitation. The knock silenced the room, the dressing room showdown. "Mr. Colbert doesn't want to speak with you right now," the executive producer called out. Wahlberg didn't flinch, unyielding. "I didn't ask to speak with you. I'm not leaving until we do." There was a beat of silence. Then, the door opened. Colbert stood there, his face unreadable. "5 minutes," he said curtly, then added, "Alone." His staff filed out, some exchanging uneasy glances as they passed Wahlberg. The door clicked shut behind them. "The hell was that out there?" Wahlberg asked, motioning toward the stage. "Instead, you tried to turn it into some political ambush." Colbert crossed his arms defensively. "My show isn't a commercial. We talk about real issues here." "You mean attacking me for respecting where I come from?" "That wasn't journalism, Stephen. Audience at my expense." Colbert's jaw tightened. "You celebrities think you're owed softball interviews just because you showed up." "No," Wahlberg shot back. "I think I'm owed the interview your producers promised one about the film, not a Batanzwich lecture on authenticity." Colbert moved behind his desk, a deliberate power move reclaiming space, control. Wahlberg remained standing. "My audience expects hard questions," Colbert said, slipping into the patronizing tone he reserved for guests who pushed back. "No," Wahlberg replied. "They expect to be entertained. The moment you decided I needed to be taught a lesson instead of having a conversation, you stopped being a host, you became a prosecutor." Colbert's fists curled. "You don't get it. This show has a perspective. We're not just here to sell your tickets." Wahlberg leaned forward. "They want to see someone talk about their work, maybe share a laugh, not get blindsided because they don't parrot your politics." A knock on the door broke the moment. "Mr. Colbert, we need you back on set in 3 minutes." The stage manager's voice called. Colbert stood, exhaling hard, clearly relieved. "We're done here?" "Yeah," Wahlberg nodded. "We are." But he paused at the threshold and looked Colbert in the eye. "I grew up with nothing, fought for every inch, never forgot where I came from. Can you say the same? Or have you been living in this echo chamber so long that you've forgotten what it's like to talk to people who don't think just like you?" The question landed, like a blow. For a brief moment, something flickered across Colbert's face recognition. Regret? No one could say. But then it vanished. "My audience understands what I do," he said stiffly. "Your audience might," Wahlberg replied, opening the door. "But what about everyone else? You used to be the kind of guy who could talk to anyone. Now, all you do is preach to a choir." Before Colbert could answer, the executive producer stepped in. "Stephen, we've got to go now." Wahlberg gave one last look. "Good luck with the rest of your show," he said. "Something tells me you're going to need it." Exit stage left. As Wahlberg made his way down the hallway, he passed the green room. Inside, a young actress sat going over note cards, visibly anxious. "Everything okay out there?" she asked nervously. Wahlberg offered her a small, knowing smile. "Just some creative differences." He paused, then added, "Word of advice stick to talking about your movie." Wahlberg walked on, disappearing through the exit doors back on set. Under the hot glare of the studio lights, Colbert was being powdered down. "Not," Colbert snapped. "No mention of Wahlberg. Move up the band. I'll fill the segment with more monologue." The audience saw what happened. Stephen, the producer, warned, "They'll know something's off." As the countdown began, Colbert straightened his tie, his smile returning like a mask being reset. "Welcome back to The Late Show," he said, as the cameras came alive. "Unfortunately, Mark Wahlberg had to leave. But we've still got a fantastic show ahead." Murmurs rolled beneath the applause. Faces exchanged glances. The air was different now, in the control room from the booth. The director leaned over to the executive producer. "Are we seriously just ... not addressing what happened?" The producer didn't answer, because the truth was clear. The real show had already aired unscripted, unrehearsed, and no amount of editing could take it back. "Boss's orders," came the reply. "We're moving on like nothing happened." But the audience wasn't so willing to play along. As Colbert attempted to shift into the next segment, something had changed. The laughs were more cautious. The applause felt obligatory. The invisible contract between host and audience, one built on trust, authenticity, and a sense of shared understanding, had been fractured. Wahlberg leaves and a call comes in outside. Wahlberg had already left the building. Paparazzi shouted questions, but he offered only a calm, parting shot. "Watch the show. It speaks for itself." As his SUV pulled away, his phone rang. It was Dwayne Johnson. "Just got a text about what happened," The Rock said. "You good?" Wahlberg let out a breath, glancing back at the shrinking studio behind him. "Yeah, just reminded why I usually stick to talking about the work." "Let me guess," Johnson replied. "Another host who thinks it's his job to put you on trial instead of having a conversation." "Something like that," Wahlberg said. "The truth is, I would have had a real conversation about class privilege, whatever if he'd come at it straight. But that wasn't the goal. He wanted a gotcha moment. And when he didn't get it, he lost the room." The show goes on, barely back inside the studio. The rest of the show rolled on, but everything felt hollow. Colbert's jokes landed flat. His interaction with the musical guest felt overperformed, like a man trying to scrub away the awkward silence that still clung to the walls. During the final break, Colbert pulled his head writer aside. "We're going to need to address this tomorrow," he said quietly. "Social media's already lighting up. What's our angle?" The writer hesitated. "Do we apologize? Make a joke of it? Or double down?" Colbert looked off for a moment, jaw tense. "We frame it as a misunderstanding. Say we had to end the segment early due to time constraints." No mention of what happened backstage. The writer frowned. "A lot of people saw it, Stephen. They know it wasn't just scheduling." Colbert's tone dropped low, tight, with something close to panic. "It has to work, because the alternative is admitting I lost control of my own show. The audience isn't buying ETAS." The last segment ended, and audience members filed out. It was clear where the real story lived in the edited tape, but in the whispers between strangers. "Did you see Wahlberg's face when Colbert started lecturing him?" one woman asked her friend. "I've never seen anything like that on a talk show." Her friend nodded. "The weirdest part was how they just acted like it didn't happen, like we were supposed to forget what we saw." Two very different nights back home. The contrast between the two men couldn't have been more stark. Wahlberg made dinner with his family. He answered a few calls from his agent, confirmed the next day's schedule, and let it go. He'd said his piece. Colbert, on the other hand, sat alone, scrolling endlessly through social media. The trending hashtags, the clips, the memes, the critiques, and worse, the silence from voices who normally rushed to his defense. What stung the most wasn't the backlash. It was the realization that for once, he'd shown too much of the man behind the performance and it hadn't gone unnoticed. Both men had revealed something real that night. Wahlberg showed the world he was exactly who he claimed to be, unpolished, direct, and unafraid. Colbert despite years of crafting the image of a thoughtful, tolerant host, showed what many had long suspected. Behind the affable smile was someone deeply uncomfortable with anyone who challenged his script. In the end, their clash wasn't just about politics or personality, it exposed a central divide in modern media. The difference between performing authenticity and actually living it in an industry built on polish and PR, where so much is managed, packaged, and spun for maximum relatability. What happened between Wahlberg and Colbert felt startlingly real, unfiltered, messy, human. And that's exactly why it resonated. If you found this breakdown of the Wahlberg-Colbert clash revealing, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a deep dive into Hollywood's most explosive moments. Was Colbert right to challenge Wahlberg, or did he cross a line and betray the trust of his guest and his audience? Drop your take in the comments below. Let's talk about it.